That one means stop talking right now. All right, we're live.
Okay. Hey everyone, welcome back to another 180 podcast. Before we get into this, make sure to check out all of our social medias at 180 Shift. You could search out pretty much anywhere and you'll be able to find us. And if you're watching on our social medias, head over to our YouTube where you're able to see a lot more of our stuff, a lot of our full-length videos that we have all archived there at 180 Shift as well. And then, of course, under the same name, 180shift.org, you can find our website, of course. And, of course, Tara.
So it's good to be back. I know we just took like a little break right there. We did some fun reactions and everything, but now we're going to dive into just a regular podcast. Yeah, I'm Tara.
Regular video.
Yes, exactly.
And you know what? We did another one over Zoom, so you guys should definitely go check that out. We did that last week over Zoom, so check that one out if you haven't already. That one's with Echo Mike. Pretty cool episode. I really like that one.
Yeah.
But I'm glad to be back in studio to do another one.
Absolutely. Well, we have
normal one.
Exactly. We have an awesome guest today. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, for sure. This is my first podcast, so excuse me if I'm like asking for signals and stuff.
No, it's good.
But hi everyone, my name is Jahselyn. I'm super excited to have been invited today and join you guys tonight to talk about some really interesting topics. I'm currently a senior at Washington University in St. Louis. I'm studying political science and Spanish. So I do a lot of political stuff. I grew up here in Echo Park, California. I recently this summer finished off an internship at a nonprofit organization focused on tenants' rights advocacy, which is an area of policy that I'm really interested in. That's just a little bit about me, but I'm excited to just dive into this discussion. And,
Now, before we get into our discussion, of course, we have to do our
We're going to dive
weekly
into the
thing.
boba. So there's a
It's
cool
boba time.
little physics trick where if you hold it like that and you put all, and you can just
that looks
go
scary.
like that.
Okay, we'll try
Just
that.
apply
Hold
the
on.
small. No, you can't put any weight on the bottom though. That's the thing.
Wait, hold on.
That's what makes it physics.
Okay, so
That's what makes it physics, guys.
okay, I opened it a little
Sorry,
too
okay.
roughly, but it's
That's
okay.
okay.
All right. So, oh my goodness, Ellie, would you like to start us off, or should I? I'm gonna take that as I should.
It's fine.
She's like, no.
In the middle of the
fine.
trying.
Oh no, this is really good though.
It is very good.
I got 50% of sugar and it still tastes really good. That's amazing.
Yeah, you can never go wrong with milk tea boba, so
Yeah.
always good.
Milk tea is always so great. I know I heard that there's not very many good boba places out there.
Unfortunately, no, not in St. Louis. We got to work
No.
on that. But there's a boba spot on campus that they recently opened, and it's always very popular. The specialty bobas are usually the ones to pick and to go for.
Nice,
yeah.
nice. I like that. Okay, at least you have something close to you. You see, my heart breaks when somebody says
piece
they
of
can't have
home.
boba. Tara's like,
Just
yeah.
munching.
Okay, well, why don't you start us off with a little bit of like your back history? So what kind of got you wanting to get into politics or study political
studying
science?
in
Like,
school, yeah.
what made you think that this is the course you wanted to take in life?
Yeah. So for me, I think, in high school, I'd always really been involved in like student government, student council. And I think with that, I really just liked, well, first of all, just having the opportunity to like represent my like sophomore class.
Yep.
Like I thought it was just really cool to have the opportunity to be a voice. I think, for instance, even small things like, being able to decide the theme on like our formal or our prom. Like I thought that was just really cool. Just being able to kind of have that like, I guess, authority in a sense, but not in like a dictatorship type thing. Like just being able to simply voice my concerns, but also the concerns of my classmates. I think also just being the fact that like during that time we were sort of on the cusp of I don't know. I just think it was like in the middle of our high school just career. So I think that the sophomore year was a really important like moment for me to do that. And I also went to a predominantly white school, and being one of the very few Latinas there, it meant a lot for me to have been like chosen like as the voice also for the very small Latino population in my school. And it just meant a lot also for me to have been like elected by my class. And it just gave me the opportunity to like speak speak to other people in my class. And I think that really became like sort of ignited my passion for like, I really love this, like this leadership thing, being able to go to student council meetings and advocate for what my classmates want. If that means like, oh, maybe they want to like ban plastic water bottles on campus, things like that, just being able to be the voice for my class. And then,
I just have a quick question. So did you ever face division at that high school level?
Yeah, I would say in terms of, I think in high school, it was more so of like I had the opportunity to just, with that kind of unite, like I guess the sort of, especially because I was only like the like representative for my sophomore class. I feel like there was definitely a distance between like the senior and junior class and the freshman class. I really had the opportunity to put in my time to voice the concerns of my sophomore class. So with that, it really just united us as a class in general. And I really enjoyed just being able to kind of contribute in that, like, I guess, division that was once there. But yeah, and I guess following high school, that sort of translated onto college, right? I was pre-law for like a year and a half because I guess for me, I only really saw my opportunity to take a political route if that was not like only in the shape of being an attorney or lawyer. I didn't really see it any other way because that's kind of, when I thought of politics, I only really thought that, being a lawyer or an attorney. But through other classes that I was able to take that focused more on, like, I took like a public policy analysis course.
What did that consist of?
That we kind of learned about just like cost benefit analysis, kind of what that looks like and how that can be applied to issues that we're passionate about. And I really also just from there I started honing in more on like, oh, like this, looking at things from a policy perspective rather than, going to court and fighting for your client, which in and that of itself is a great opportunity. But I think for me, I really found a little bit more interest in being able to be in like the forefront of implementing these policies into my communities, but also not just looking at the data and statistical side of it. For me, I find more value in kind of being able to implement those policies by interacting with community members. And I really enjoy just talking to people and hearing about people's experiences and stories. And that obviously really kind of started, in high school when I became student rep and just speaking to my classmates and hearing like, what do you want to see more of, or what are you upset about, or why do you want to like install this like water filling station here, like things like that. And for that, I just really thought of like, oh, what's a way that I can like do that but still be in politics, right? Because policies are kind of what we are governed by, and they change and reflect a lot on the opportunities that community members that specifically that are often neglected, underrepresented minority communities can benefit a lot or can benefit nothing from, right? So that's kind of when I started to switch more to like my interest in policy and like, So
I'm hearing that you really do have a heart for, letting the people's voices be heard, right?
Yeah, definitely.
That's wonderful. Now, where do you want to take this? Like, what's your main goal after college?
Yeah, so I think after college, having the opportunity, as mentioned, I did intern with a nonprofit organization located in South Central Los Angeles that focuses on truly empowering community members, but also providing them with the tools and the knowledge to educate themselves on how to empower themselves, right? Oftentimes, I think especially I specifically was working under a project that focused on advocating tenants, commercial tenants and residential tenants, specifically like small business owners, on their rights as tenants, because the differentiation between commercial tenants and residential tenants, the matter of the fact is commercial tenants have zero tenant protections. And through my internship, I had the opportunity to go out to these small businesses, which were mainly predominantly Latino, Latinx community members, and me being also a Spanish speaker, I was really able to utilize that skill and really connect with them on that level, because I think a big issue with that is just like the language barrier and not being able to kind of know where to ask for these resources and who to help with, especially when there's an impediment like language barriers. So I think through that, I really found a love for community organizing, and that's something that I definitely do want to do in the future. Definitely I want to continue to kind of maybe be a legislative staffer in the Senate. I would love to bring my knowledge that I learned hopefully in like DC back here to my hometown in California, and continue to do some of that community organizing work, and in the far future possibly run for like local elected office.
You could absolutely do that. I see more young people getting involved in politics all the time. It's like a lot of them have been kind of woken up. There's more of an urgency. Have you noticed that? And if you have, why do you think that is?
Yeah, I definitely have noticed more of an urgency. I think, especially being a political science major, I'm surrounded by, you know, people that are just politically involved, not only because like that is their major, but they're truly passionate about it. And I think for me, being able to have the privilege to study politics, right? I'm a first-generation college student, so having the opportunity to do that, I have gained a lot of political knowledge myself, and with that, I've been able to apply, like, you know, political concepts that I learned, or just being able to get a better grasp on like just the status and current state of politics in our country. And I think that urgency really just comes a lot from just like fear, just from like our future, especially just with the election cycles. I mean, I think for me, this is going to be my second election cycle that I'm voting in, and it definitely is a very contentious time. And I think that urgency just comes from the fact of like we want change, and we've also a lot of us, especially like I feel like Gen Z, we feel just very unheard.
Yeah. What do you want change in?
I think change in general. I would say change in just like more of a voice. For us, I think oftentimes we're, you know, us as Gen Z, like we're going to be the ones that are going to be up in Congress, you know, years from now. And I think with that, it's just so important that a lot of that urgency just comes from the fact of like, we're just, scared for our future, and we want change, and sort of just ensuring that we have the opportunity to voice our opinions. And yeah, I think especially just with the whole election, with like we're just so used to always seeing like Trump at the forefront. For me, I feel like in terms of like, you know, articles or just Trump, and you know, it's always just like Trump, I feel like, and we obviously have our own certain ideas about the now presidential candidate. But I think currently, from my point of view, and several of the other my colleagues that also hold very similar political ideologies of me, I think we're just exhausted of the fact of just how much, for instance, like the SCOTUS's, like their rule of presidential immunity, like things like that. It just completely discourages you from the fact that like someone who is a convicted felon and has, you know, completely just been, you know, is a convicted felon. I think that just says a lot about the presidential candidate. But the fact that he still has the opportunity to run as a president and represent our country, I don't think is a great representation at all. And I think with things like that, it's really just showed how like the law is clearly underneath the president, and it completely just outlaws just the entire root of democracy, and is also just like a testament that democracy is dying.
You know, speaking of law in general, what's your opinion on the term lawfare?
Yeah, lawfare. I would say I'm not too familiar with the term as much, but yeah, I don't know if you can like expand a little.
Yeah, so lawfare is warfare in the form of law.
Yeah.
So some would say that the attacks on Trump and his presidency were not of a valid source, but they were in fact lawfare to try and stop him from, you know, running for president again. What's your response to that kind of concept?
Yeah, I think, well, obviously the law that's something that's just like our entire like American democracy and the U.S. The ideals are rooted in the laws, right? But I think with laws, something that is deeper than that, and it's not written in like, you know, these written and documented, or just like the morality behind the way that things are done, and also just like humanity in and of itself. I think a lot of laws right now, or a lot of laws that are being, for instance, presented or want to be passed, for instance, in like Project 25, which is like the 900-page proposal of and is the root of sort of Trump's presidency, are completely against just like humanity. And
how so?
I think for instance, this kind of goes back to my personal opinions. Wanting to cut Medicare, wanting to cut Social Security, coming from family that are also an immigrant family myself, I have seen the immense amount of benefit that these opportunities, these social services, what they have done for millions of families, and I think it just completely is in. And also wanting to just come out with the biggest, largest mass deportation of all immigrants. I think issues like this, obviously there comes the whole sort of issues of like national security, right? And obviously just the way that Trump has criminalized these certain groups of people, minority of groups of people, because of just his xenophobic values, because of just like his deeply rooted hate for people that weren't born in this country, and specifically Mexican immigrants. And being Mexican myself, that also just really, the fact that I am a citizen doesn't really still ignites that fear in me, just like the fact of like my phenotype, what I look like, and being Mexican, that still kind of brings that fear of like, oh, like just because I am a citizen here, there is no way of telling that, you know, there can be something that under his presidency, he does something to affect me, right? Just because of my nationality. So I think there comes like those sort of fears.
Now, I believe Trump had something where he said, if you get a degree of any kind, like a high school degree or some, you know, even like a college degree, then it will be easier to apply for citizenship, right?
Well, he said anybody who was willing to get a degree can come over and become a citizen.
Yeah, like it's easier because I think that's, for me, you know, that's where a lot of the debate seems to have like spread off into these miscommunications because it's like, I don't know anyone who says that immigrants who become citizens like help our country. Like you see it all the time. You see it everywhere, you know. Indians, I believe, have one of the, they have the highest credit scores and income records in America, and most of them are like first generation families. So they come here, they become citizens, and then they kind of work it up that way. So I see kind of a miscommunication in it where it's like, is it really that you don't want like Mexicans to be here? Like, is it Trump that doesn't want Mexicans to be there, or does Trump want Mexicans who want to become Americans to follow the rules and regulations so they can like legally be in the system of the United States versus being undocumented and kind of roaming free, and then it's just more like the Wild West versus the United States of America?
Yeah, I think the difficult part with Trump is I think he just misconstrues a lot of what he says. But I think something for me that I can say without like fault is the fact that he has like an immense hate for illegal immigrants, right? And he has several other derogatory names that I won't even say for this group of people. And I think with that, it can be I've seen enough. Obviously, the news, it shapes and it frames things the way that they want to, especially certain news that are more right-winged or left-winged, right? But I always make sure that when I go to news sources, I'm looking at a diverse platforms, right? I think that's so important because you can easily just be like swayed into thinking one way because like, oh, I'm on this said news that I always and only look at. But no, I always ensure that I'm looking at different at different sources, right? Yeah. And I think with that, it has just helped me a lot. I mean, I wrote a whole like 20-page piece in Spanish talking about Trump and kind of his use of Hispandering and his the way that he makes fun of the Spanish language. So not even just the group themselves, not just illegal, undocumented immigrants, right? But you know, just like the entire culture. And I've seen also just the way that he's completely dehumanized and generalized the entire community as being criminals, as taking away our jobs, which I know he's a big fan of saying that all the time. And this also the whole sort of debate about like taking away jobs, we've also seen in many of his also recent press releases of categorizing certain jobs as like a minority group. Oh, so there are black jobs apparently now. There are, and even in many of those press releases, he's been asked to expand on that, and he doesn't explicate that at all. So I think there's a lot of just him not being able to really expand on like what on his thoughts or what exactly he's trying to say, which is it's very just confusing for a lot of viewers that are not really as politically aware, right? So yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting thing. I mean, for my family, again, I'm second generation American, right? Mexican American. A lot of my family has some differing views, but I think a lot of them actually do like Trump. So I think it's just depending on how you really view what he's saying, just everything. Obviously, everybody has their own opinion on this guy. I mean, I think a lot of people, he's been definitely an interesting person, I would have to say. Yeah. A lot of people have their own opinions about him, but I did want to go back to something you did say about how a lot of Gen Z are exhausted with how they're being treated, right? And I've seen this throughout all of my friends. I've seen where, and even the polls and the statistics have showed that a majority of Gen Z are currently in the middle and have not associated themselves with a particular party because they kind of find themselves like sort of homeless in a way. And so I guess the exhaustion could be part of it, but can you delve into really why you think some of us are sort of leaning towards the center?
Yeah, I would say primarily, obviously, we've heard also many things about when any new presidential candidate gets on the ballot, there's going to be the first thing that people are going to do is like attack them, right? Look for anything that they've anything of their past that it will be just a great opportunity to put them down, right? Especially when kind of Kamala came into the running, it was during a very high alert time, which was the attempted assassination of Trump, right? Yeah. So I think many arguments that I've heard about Kamala, especially one of them formerly being like, or the kind of the focus being like the fact that she was a former prosecutor and kind of all the previous debates that she's had. And for instance, obviously her also just contributions in like mass deportations as well, which that's something that obviously I recognize and I acknowledge. But I think with that, a lot of people have just seen that a lot of my friends that I've spoken to, there just isn't really a better candidate. Okay. And I think a lot of people, actually, although I do know that a lot of my friends are kind of in the middle, I've also spoken to some of my friends that they are kind of just, I guess, in a way, just kind of deciding on, or kind of just sticking with which one is like the better option, like which one has better morals, better values. So not, I wouldn't want to say settling because that just sounds like, not as great. Like, oh, I'm going to settle this. Like, I'm going to settle for this person for my country.
Almost like a lesser of two evils.
Yeah,
almost?
Exactly. That's the phrase that I've heard definitely circulating a lot. And I want to say that that's sort of kind of how I've gone into this election cycle. Okay. And it is like difficult to kind of say that, like the lesser than two evils, because we should want the best for our country. And if we don't agree that this candidate would be the best, even though, they do have more morals or maybe more ideals and values that align with you, you should still, I guess, kind of negate that and just stick to your values at the end of the day. But yeah, I guess with that, I primarily have sort of settled on kind of where I would want to like vote, because I have seen a lot of good in the candidate that I think I may vote with. But I think also just speaking with like other of my friends and peers, there's just still that like level of uncertainty, regardless if they vote for Trump or Kamala. The outcomes that could come of that.
How do you feel about because you have acknowledged the fact that Kamala has done a lot of the mass deportation things. How do you personally feel about that?
Yeah, I think that has also been difficult, especially because I obviously am in support of just the entire undocumented community and just my own personal experiences coming from an immigrant family as well. Obviously, I'm not at all okay with the fact that she did contribute in that. But I do think that a lot of what she does have in mind for her presidency, it doesn't at all outweigh the fact that she contributed in that. But I think there can be a lot of good that can still come out from, her other, I guess, propositions and proposals that she has made.
Yeah.
But,
Now, we also have a third candidate option currently, Kennedy. He's been making a big rise.
Yeah.
I think it's been, I've seen him like all over my Instagram right
Yeah.
now. I mean, I'm sure you have too, where
yeah.
he's been doing things with influencers, just a lot of different people he's been talking to. How do you feel personally about Kennedy?
Yeah, I honestly haven't really looked much into him, but I do know that he has done something that I find really interesting with this and with all kind of three presidential candidates. Robert F. Kennedy being one that I haven't really paid as much attention to, is just like, maybe it's just because being like a Gen Zer, it seems like this presidential candidate election cycle, they're really trying to attract young voters.
Yeah.
And they're doing that in their own like ways, right? Their own tactics.
Instagram.
Yeah.
They're all like on Instagram.
Yeah, and like using like Gen Z terms. I'm sure you guys all seen like the Kamala Harris's first
phone calls.
Yeah, her phone
Those
call.
are so staged. There's like multicam.
Yeah, I think she had one with I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name correctly, but Taraji. Just like,
people.
Yeah, just like all the slang that they use to make them seem a little bit, more like relatable, right? So
you can so see through it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think because they're so staged, like it just makes it even more I don't know, just less inclined for you to really want to pay attention and to keep on watching the video, because it just
cringy.
brings out cringe, right? So you're like, I can't watch this any longer.
Kamala, you're making us cringe.
Yeah, like, please don't do this. So although it is entertaining to watch, to see kind of how like the different strategies that presidents are taking now. And I know Trump recently went on like this Twitch stream with a really infamous Twitch streamer, who also has a lot of controversies. And just completely, I guess, not even really taking much of a political stance to it, but more so just like a media approach. And I also saw that, with Robert F. Kennedy too, just, collabing with a bunch of influencers.
Like, who did he call? He called the guy who was in that movie. Oh my gosh. The guy who dated Katy Perry. What's his name?
Oh, no, he was, okay. Wait, hold on. Why did I just forget his name?
I never forget
Russell Brand.
Russell Brand,
Oh,
yes.
okay.
He was like, I'm just going to call my good old friend Russell Brand.
No, I watched it. It was so funny because I was like, what is he talking about? He was talking about like a bear, and like, I was like, what's happening?
I just think it's, I guess we are talking about them, though. It is a
does-
marketing
it
No,
strategy
and
that
it
actually
definitely
does
is
work,
working, right? But I just find it so interesting that they've taken this strategy. I mean,
the
they're
Gen
doing
Z
it at
vote.
the right. Yeah, the Gen Z vote.
They are
of course.
prioritizing the Gen Z vote, which is like, how many Gen Zers do you know actually vote?
No, exactly.
Like,
exactly, and it's crazy.
Why are they
too.
prioritizing it?
Right, especially just for voter turnout among like Gen Z, right?
Yeah,
like,
shouldn't they be voting on like age 50 to 70? Like that seems like the
Yeah.
most, like that is the age of votes, right?
Yeah.
But maybe they already know that those people have made up their mind.
Right, I think especially for Kamala, I think her like projected or her target audience right now is Gen Z for sure.
What do you think about Megan Thee Stallion?
Her performance at
What did
the
you think
rally.
about that? Seriously, what was your honest reaction?
I mean, I really loved Megan Thee Stallion. So
What do you love about her?
I just love like her energy. I mean, I used to dance for
You didn't
many
dance like that
years.
though, right, girl?
Oh
Come
no,
on.
never. I don't think I would at a presidential rally. But I mean, she had her cropped like sort of
Suit.
business
She had a Kamala
formal
suit that was like,
Yeah, it
Kamala
was.
at
I
night.
was not expecting that. For a second I thought it was like Photoshop, because it's
Yeah, it
crazy.
didn't
Like
even look
people
real,
do
yeah.
anything nowadays.
Well, for me, it was like why did they pick a song that had like every other word blanked out?
Yeah,
That was so funny to me. I was like,
it was confusing,
it
especially
just sounds like everybody.
yeah.
said it
It was like, where's the rest of the song?
Right. It's just like you didn't have one song where you don't say like something nasty every 5 seconds.
No, exactly. I think maybe the song, I definitely see why they chose the song, right? Because it was directing towards like abortion rights. But I think that, once again, it's just like a testament to like the different route that these presidential candidates are taking.
I found it so, okay, when I see people in Congress, okay, when they do like this lovely little like, I don't know, it's just like they'll say some Gen Z slang, they throw it in there, and they think they just made like some type of new thing, and you're like,
yo,
please don't do it, please don't do it.
It's very
guys.
painful to watch.
It is painful
for sure.
and it's like they really need some actual
they drag
Gen
out some
Z
like
people in
rapper.
there.
No,
You're
and
like
that,
6ix9ine, you like him, right?
like you know him, right? Rainbow hair.
Yeah, he's rainbow. You
I'm like, please vote for me. But yeah,
no, that is so funny. Oh
I
my
think
goodness.
in a way too, it's just like made some of like this entire election cycle not just like all of them sort of just vying for the young vote, but like in the wrong way.
Yeah.
I don't really think they've actually tried to, as you mentioned, like connect with especially like the Gen Z audience.
Yeah.
Well, because we all already know the talking points.
Yeah.
We already know the sides. We already know
Yeah.
the political affiliation.
Yeah,
there
they
was a
made
time when it was kind of like there were moderate issues, but now it's like everything is on one side or the other.
It's quite polarized.
It's super polarized, and we're not blind to that, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like we already know all that stuff. And frankly, they know that we know.
Yeah.
So that's why they're just trying to people please us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
I could see that. Yeah.
I just feel like that's so obvious.
The one thing that hasn't particularly like made me cringe sometimes is actually Robert F. Kennedy, because sometimes he'll do stuff that are actually natural to him. He's not going out of his way to do something that's unnatural for him.
Also, he's married to like one of the funniest ladies on the planet.
That could help. But I feel like if candidates would actually do something that's way more natural, where we know that they're not putting on a show just for us, it would help them come across so much more authentic.
Yeah.
I think there's like a lack of authenticity within our candidates, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, trying to people please isn't one thing.
Well, you know what, though? I want to back up a little bit and say that it has sparked, because they're influxing, is that the right word? Putting so much of the campaigns in our social media apps, it is sparking more controversy. I mean, I know that this wasn't planned. I mean, depending on who you talk to, the shooting wasn't planned for Trump. But
that's
as
a
far
whole
as I know,
nother,
But it was like, it felt like for about 24 hours, literally everybody was talking about it. Comedians, like parents. It was like
all
millennials, Gen Z.
Everybody
Was talking about the shooting, and they all had a perspective on it. Or they were making comedy videos on it. But aside from that, because that was like a crazy event that happened. But then you have like, now you have a higher influx of, why do I keep using that word? Of like the Megan Thee Stallion video, or now I'm seeing a lot of stuff about Kamala's vice president. And it's just like, I think it was like through some of the craziness that happened online, organically, it seems like people just kind of tuned in, because it's election season, and it's just like something to tune into. What did I call it the other day? American soap opera.
I mean, honestly, that seems like what it is. It just seems like now there's just like pure sort of entertainment. And yeah, especially I think with the assassination, like as you mentioned, that's all anybody was talking about. And it really just kind of didn't shine any light on, like, I think what had Biden already decided at that time that he was dropping out? No, right? But it happened very quickly after.
Well, and he immediately made it about gun rights.
Yeah.
And I think that was a mistake, because it seemed like such a fluke that happened, and then he immediately responded with politicide. And I think that's another huge reason that a lot of Democrats like tried to get him to step down, because they were like, no. Like, and then if you look at it, just even it's been like what, like three weeks or something since Kamala's been taking over. It feels like she's president, honestly.
Yeah.
It feels like Biden just like sat down in a chair somewhere.
Yeah, honestly.
No. And because the energy that she brought, it was like, she's young, and she just like brings so much energy, and it's funny because she seemed so quiet before, and so it's like all of the keeping silent is like coming out now. Like she's coming out in these like outbursts of like energy, and I think a lot of Democrats, that's what they desperately were looking for, and so like. But anyway, I was wondering, so what political outlets on the conservative side do you watch? Because you said you like to watch different media from both sides. What conservative outlets or news people do you watch?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you have like Fox News, which
Watch Fox News? Fox News? I do not.
Here, I think for me, I know what I'm getting myself
sometimes.
into, but I think for me, it's just really important that I look at both sides and the way that I guess the way that they're framed and proposed, right? And I always, regardless of the fact that I'm looking at a platform that I'm always used to, like, you know, looking at and reading at, I always ensure that, like, at heart, my ideals and beliefs are being projected in what I watch and influencing what I watch. Yeah, obviously I read LA Times, being from LA and obviously going to school in Missouri. I think it's a great opportunity for me to just keep in touch with what is going on in my hometown. But yeah, those are, I guess, a couple of the platforms that I like to definitely like dip my toes into and
What
read
about
throughout
like
the week.
Daily Wire? Have you ever watched Daily Wire or any of them?
Yeah, Daily Wire. I do watch.
What shows on Daily Wire do you like?
I honestly just whatever, just sort of like clickbaity titles appeal to me. But yeah, that's kind of like what I go for. But I primarily love reading. I think a little bit more than watching the news, which is why I stray more into like Washington Post, things like that.
Yeah. I like reading LA Times. I mean, I was, you know, ever since I was small, I would actually pick up the newspaper because my grandpa has LA Times, right? And so I would every morning, you know, my grandpa would take one of the sections of the LA Times, and I would just take the rest. And so I would read everything every morning. Yeah, and I love doing that. So
I just got a comment. I was like, why are you eating? So I'm drinking some bonbon boba, and yes, I do like. I cannot stop. I love the boba. I love the boba. Yeah.
No. But yeah, with the recent, I guess, announcement that Kamala has now picked her VP. What are your thoughts on him?
Tim Walz.
Walz. I kept calling him Tim Waz.
I mean, the L is a little hidden in there. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think once again, like it's an energetic pair, and I think that's something that has really just brought attention for me, like being a Gen Zer. Like I just love seeing like just like the energy and like the passion that is being brought into it. And I think with Tim Walz, also, you know, being a governor from Minnesota. Also, just his background and like being a teacher, and also just representing a rural community. I think it's a good match. I would say. I think he's matching the energy that Kamala's bringing into. I know they had a rally today at Philadelphia. I tuned in some of that, and yeah, some of the he has no shame at all though. Definitely in calling out. He definitely like calls out his. You know, his opponents in a different manner, which is, I think, more of like, I guess, a roast, as we would call it nowadays, like when you're roasting others, which once again, it's like, you know, attracting like the Gen Z audience, right? Because the
earthquake?
That's an earthquake, probably.
Oh my goodness, we're in an earthquake right now.
I don't think I was moving that much.
Okay.
I know, I was like,
not today,
kicking
devil.
my foot.
We're safe, okay.
We're talking
crazy.
too much.
You were in a podcast in an earthquake. That's a crazy story.
Okay,
that was crazy.
Oh,
okay, Jesus protect us. Amen.
I want your reaction. So one of my friends, because we put up a thing of like what people, oh yeah, look at that. It just came in. You may have felt shaking. Initial estimate is 76 miles away.
No, I'm not going to say it. Anyway.
Okay. Anyways. So we did put up a thing to see what people's reactions are from our audience. One of them was, I want to say it's giving old white man replacement. What's your opinion on that one? We do have a lot of.
He is a white man. He definitely is. And he is from like the Midwest for sure, rural. Yeah, I would say I honestly didn't know that much about Tim Walz before, so I did have to like brush up on like just sort of my background on him.
I don't know much about him.
I always
either.
feel about VPs. It's like, where did this person come from?
Who is this person
from? Yeah, because even when like I was looking at just like other platforms predicting sort of who Kamala was going to pick for his VP. I don't even think he was any of the options. So
No, he wasn't
I
any
didn't
of them that I
really
see.
I didn't
Yeah.
research. Like, I didn't just think of like, oh, what if she picks Governor Tim Walz? Like, I just didn't really know of him.
Well, what's
so-
interesting is they had that huge list of Biden's possible VPs, and they were a lot
okay.
of black women, and just, you know, and there was that whole thing of there should be more black women in the White House. So it's interesting that Kamala didn't pick someone
And win for-
like one of those women
Yeah.
that were on the thing. It's just interesting to me. Why do you think that they that she went with, you know, someone who's been like the type of less diverse
Yeah.
option, I guess you could say.
Yeah, and that's something I'm not sure, because I think a lot of people have also just been really excited by her candidacy. First of all, she's going to be like the first for a lot of things, right? First female president, first black and also Indian American president. So she's going to be sort of like the pioneer for a lot of that if she's elected. So I think for me, I would have definitely thought that she would have chosen a more, diverse,
candidate. Yeah.
running mate.
Yeah.
And I think I was definitely a little bit surprised that she did go for a rural white man.
I think we were all sort of surprised by that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, huh?
Yeah,
Because
and-
most of her campaign is diversity.
Yeah.
So it just seems like weird. But then, I don't know, at this point it all feels like such a chess game. Like there's
Yeah.
so much that we're not seeing. There's so much that we don't know.
At this point, everything is just super like
They're, like-
unpredictable.
and there are like meetings that are definitely happening where like 20 people are discussing
Yeah.
possible outcomes of this
Yeah.
stuff, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I just feel like I know that's happening.
No,
you know?
definitely.
Because it all seemed so strategic. Even with like Trump and Biden's debate. By the way, what did you think about Trump and Biden's debate back in the day? What was your opinion on that, like while it was happening?
It was quite painful to watch on both sides. I honestly didn't get much about just like any of their like goals and future for like our country from that debate, which is sort of like the premise of it, right? Like,
Right.
I think it was like, yeah, it was, I would just say, painful to watch.
Yeah.
And then the moment they got into like talking about like golf, like I was like,
Yes,
I
I
can't
know.
watch this any longer. Like, are they even talking? Well, for starters, I was just super upset at the fact that like 80% of the questions that Trump was asked, he directed at, he didn't answer at all. I mean, there were, I can
How did
count.
he not answer them?
He just wouldn't answer them at all. Like they would answer him a question, but he would continue to answer the question
previous
before.
question.
But I guess the proctors or the people that were asking the questions kind of bypassed it, and he did this several times. And about important questions, about, for instance, immigration being one of them, or how he would serve like black voters. These questions that obviously we've seen his answers to them in the past, right? But he refused to in the most kind of important platform to not answer. So it was just very upsetting. I think I just remember just kind of just like not yelling, but slightly like very like quietly shouting
At the TV.
yeah, no, I was on my laptop, so I was just like, why aren't you answering the questions?
Yeah, I had an interesting perspective where when it was over, you had like Joe Biden come out and be like, Biden killed it. And I was like,
yeah.
where?
Yeah.
Like, where?
Yeah, and it was also very obviously painful to see it on Biden's side, right? Just kind of seeing him just struggle to fully kind of I guess articulate right what he was trying to say.
And I get those moments too.
No,
you know?
it happens. Also, like you freeze, especially if you don't know what to say, and you're being asked these like super important questions. But these are questions that you should always be asking, especially as a president.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
as a president, right?
You should be
These are not new.
well-versed.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. It's like the
you've
same
encountered
problems that
this
have
before.
been
Yeah, now you're
happening,
just
yeah.
on live TV having to answer the questions so
Yeah,
that your
who's struggling
constituents and
publicly, yeah.
you know. We all know kind of what your plan is and how you want to rectify and go about solving these issues that are that have become that have just become huge barriers for everyone in this country. But yeah, it was definitely difficult on both sides just to see the lack of productivity in the conversations.
I wanted to ask about your classes and like the specific content of them. But before we do that, I was wondering if you've seen RFK made this documentary. It's only like about 20 minutes long. It's called The Border at Midnight. Have you seen of it or heard it or
I have
anything?
not.
So it is about him going to the border at midnight and basically just like, because he was anti-war wall. Then he went there, and I'll just give you a brief rundown, but I highly recommend that you go on YouTube. You can just search it, Border at Midnight, RFK Jr. And it's really amazing because it's all spontaneous, right? So he's there with Secret Service or I don't know if he hired them.
It's his private
It's his private security, but there's a ton of them. And so, and they just show up randomly. So it's a completely random visit to the border, and he finds that it's primarily not Central or Mexican Americans at the border waiting in line. It's primarily Africans and Asians who are waiting in line to get into America. And that's why I say, watch it for yourself, because I don't want to like spring a question on you of something that you know nothing about. Watch it for yourself. But it is a very interesting, insight piece because they really go into the gruesome details of what's happening to children that are undocumented and how easy it is for them to fly off the radar. And a lot of them are being used for not only trafficking, but just, drug trafficking, but sex trafficking. And they're basically being used as pawns. And some are bought away from their families. Like, let's say their family are trying to travel into America. They're like bought from them and then used as a pawn to smuggle either themselves or like a fentanyl operation through different. And then the other thing that this film talks about is the manipulation of the entrance ports and the unfinished wall. So there's some parts, how Biden ceased the wall to be built? Well, there's some portions of the wall where it's just a gap.
Okay.
So what will happen is there's manipulation where because of that gap, there's a big I was going to say influx again. What is up with that word? There's a big mass of people going, and when he interviewed a lot of these people who were standing in a line to get into America, they would say, are you seeking asylum? And most of them said no. Out of all the people he asked, one family said yes. Our family was threatened by political leaders, and we are fleeing to America for asylum. Everyone else said opportunity, 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 freedom, American dream, all that stuff. And most of them were, like I said, from Africa and Asia. So, but when a mass of people comes over there, evil people go on this side and basically manipulate the mass over here to get more of their agenda through these ports that are unfinished. And going to the border at midnight completely changed RFK Jr.'s opinion about the border, about the wall. He realized the victimization of not only children, but also women from the wall. And I believe his stance changed into just, kind of like immigration, citizenship reform, which is something that I can get behind. My father-in-law was deported. That sucks. Yeah. I still haven't met the guy because he's in the Philippines. And he came here by himself and was basically scammed. He tried to apply for citizenship. He paid someone $5,000. The person scammed him, gave him a fake Social Security card, turned him into basically a felon. Wow. So this is a common occurrence. Yeah. So I think it's important that that people, focus on, okay, how do we make these immigrants become documented citizens? It's very important because that is an area that needs attention, obviously. But, making it so it's not there, then it's just giving too much opportunity for like the people in that movie. And by the end of that movie, RFK said, finish the wall, finish this wall. He was so disturbed by the things he saw. So anyway, but yeah, if you have any thoughts on that, but again, I recommend watching the documentary first.
No, for sure. I mean, I think a lot of it also, like, for undocumented immigrants and just like immigration laws, I think what's so difficult about it is that they're always changing. They change from day to day, right? And I think that's also what makes it so difficult. Like, you could have maybe entered that process like 20 years ago, but 20 years ago, and then you just it's just constantly changing. So what applied then just no longer applies. And there's just always a level of uncertainty in like the entire immigration process. And just like also like the lack of help too, right? In the case of your father-in-law that was scammed, you know, in those cases, like you won't be able to tell if like you're being scammed or not, right? Because
you don't have family out
here. Exactly.
And
You're putting your entire just
trust
life and trust in someone's hands, and the whole immigration process. It's a legal process. With legal process comes like jargon that people are unfamiliar with, the language barriers that comes in that, being just completely
language barriers,
taken advantage of, and having no family or like resources or anything to like back into, right? Because that isn't really in the cards for many of these undocumented immigrants that are going through these processes alone, so I think. Yeah, but I will definitely look into that. Border at Midnight.
RFK Jr., I did want to ask about your classes, but we have about, 15 more minutes?
Yeah, I did have some more questions, too.
Okay, I just wanted... I'll let Ellie take over in a second here, but I did want to say that I used to be so liberal. In high school, I loved... I even loved Hillary. When I think about it, I went to the, the hat riot thing with the pink hats. I had my pink hat. I went in LA. In high school, I wrote like a 10-page essay on the 19th Amendment from the perspective of, equity for women and that kind of stuff. So I was very much in that. I loved Obama. I was so in it. And it wasn't until I was on my way to the abortion clinic, about to get my abortion, that I had a change of heart and I had a change of mind. And I did not get the abortion. I had the baby. I wasn't sure if that was the right or wrong decision at the time, but I knew I was going to do it. I just felt the calling to do it. And I became a mother at 18. And I noticed the difference between government programs and independent organizations. And it really stuck with me pretty much. Up until now, it still sticks with me. Just the complete difference. And I think for me, it really comes down to, and again, this is like the immigration thing. Who needs to help the victims in America? Should it be the government or should it be like the churches or the independent nonprofit organizations or the people or the communities? I highly think that. that is the road. When I was dealing with government programs, I was on WIC, I was on different, programs that they had to offer. It was a nightmare. They weren't nice to me. They didn't have to be nice to me because I was just another knocked up teen girl who
case number.
Yeah, exactly. And they knew I was desperate, so I really felt taken advantage of by those programs versus when I was helped by an organization called Sisters for Life, which is a nonprofit Catholic organization that stands up for women who keep their babies. It was like night and day. They treated me like a person. They treated me with respect. And I think for me, that's what stood me up and gave me the encouragement and the the boost that I needed to become a working citizen, to realize the kind of mother I wanted to be able to grow into being a wife, and just stuff that the government programs that were laid out for me did not offer me at all. They offered me pennies, paperwork, and judgment. And so I just wanted to give you that 180 shift moment from my perspective. But I'll pass the mic over to Ellie now. She's like, I've heard this too many times.
No, thank you for sharing that. Thank you.
So I just want to get your opinion on what are some areas you think both parties can improve in?
Yeah, so I think I would say for especially like the right wing, I think just being like more cognizant of I guess minority groups, right? And just kind of understanding that many of just like these laws and policies are are ingrained and have been written centuries ago, years ago. Many of them have not been updated, and are just systemically discriminating, and are historically rooted in discriminatory morals, right? And I think that's just something that is important to recognize, that we should all deserve to have opportunities in this country, right? I mean, going back to just like this American dream, which I have a lot of like just issues in the way that that concept, this sort of fetishized concept of American dreams by just many undocumented immigrants. They expect the moment that they get here to have that American dream, but there is that lack of support and resources from governmental programs that are unable to fulfill that dream. And at that point, once people are brought in here, you're left on your own to seek out those resources. Nobody helps you here. Like, you have to look for those resources. I mean, coming from a limited income household myself, I come also from a single parent household. My mom also reaped the benefits of WIC programs, rental assistance programs, but she was never told, like, we never had anyone knocking on our door, hey, there's these programs here for you and your family. No, my mom had to seek out those resources. And I think that's something that I think especially like the right-wing party, they're not aware of that, and just being more cognizant of these laws, policies, and opportunities that strategically, just outcast minority groups.
I just want to add too, just really quickly, that there's a suppression of those organizations being known. I mean, I always say if Planned Parenthood lived up to their name, they would have one phone number of one organization that you could call if you were just on the fence.
Yeah.
But they don't. In their text, to this day, you can check it, they warn against places like Pregnancy Counseling Center. They warn against them. So it's like, I feel like a lot of people on the right are trying to mainstream these types of organizations, these types of programs. And I mean, Christianity as a whole, but there's so much suppression, you know, there's so much suppression coming from, corporations like Planned Parenthood. And I just see so much of that because I am constantly trying to basically, it's like, you remember the Shout Your Abortion movement? I'm trying to shout Sisters for Life. I'm trying to shout pregnancy counseling centers. But it's like we don't have the $1 million budget for marketing to put signs everywhere of, 5 steps you can take if you decided to keep that baby. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that in there. Sorry, Ellie.
No, exactly. No. And with that too, I think with the right wing, like it just seems so like there's no like malleability, like for right wing, you just have that one ideology. If you're right wing, like you have to completely abide and agree with all these ideals that they stand for. But I think what the left wing, what they do so well of is like there aren't those sort of like, these are our ideals that we stand for. I feel like there's more just like liberty and fluidity in your ideals, and that goes into that recognition of recognizing we all come from different backgrounds and experiences, and I think that the left wing party really does well in allowing constituents to explore their ideals, where I feel like the left right wing is super like more hardcore on that. I think it's kind of just like one fine line, whereas I think the left wing has
on the flip side, what do you think are some harmful things that the left does?
I think with the left, some things that I think, or one particular thing that I think can sometimes be difficult is just I think the whole idea of just like voter turnout, encouraging people to vote. Obviously, I think that's super important. That's something that I really stand by. But sometimes I think the way that they sort of approach encouraging anyone to vote can sometimes also just not really consider that some people may not vote for their own reasons. And I think sometimes being a part of the left wing party, you can feel like super just like an outlier. You're like, oh, I didn't vote. Like maybe I don't belong in this group. Maybe I don't belong on this side. Because like I think voting is kind of an epitome and a super strong just part of being identifying with that side. But a lot of people, I think, have had many negative experiences with voting, or they have maybe don't feel like their vote counts, which is these are just common attitudes that are super that have been super, I guess, like voiced, especially in like the left-wing party. And I think if people on the left wing, sometimes it can be overbearing, knowing that like you're always speaking to your friends that are always encouraging you to vote, which is great, but it's also sometimes there can be a lack of just awareness of like for particular reasons that people may not vote, not because they don't believe in democracy, not because they don't care for the future of their country, or because they don't care for the issues that are being raised on the ballot that they support, but just people's personal negative experiences with voting, or just kind of everyone kind of is just in their own certain journey of life and has their own experiences with voting, and that's not something that should be looked down upon if you're not able to do it, or you don't feel like you should at the moment. So that's maybe one thing that I think could be a little bit could be better about just like the left wing for sure.
Now, you're also talking about how a lot of people, there's some people who do feel like their vote doesn't count.
Yeah.
What would you say to those people?
Yeah, I think, and this is like a discussion that I have, especially a lot with just like my family in particular. And I think for me, I always just ensure that like, even if they feel that their vote doesn't count, it's still like their vote. It's still their voice. I think just knowing the fact that you at least had some influence or had some contribution to, just like just your future and the future of our family and just the entire country and just these issues that we want to rectify and are passionate about. I think it's just like a great feeling, even though maybe if you didn't get the outcome that you particularly wanted. I think just knowing that you had a contribution could be very gratifying, but obviously it's difficult to see if you feel like you're constantly like being not seeing that outcome that you want, right? If you're constantly feel like you're being let down. And I think in those cases, I just really try my best to encourage and let them know that their vote is important. And even if they feel like as mentioned, like I know a lot of people now are maybe going to vote for a third party or vote independently, that's still your vote. That's your choice. And that's something that you've been given a privilege to do. I mean, I've spoken to like my grandma and we had a really emotional conversation. She also is an immigrant and is an undocumented immigrant. And she's told me like the fact that you have the opportunity, she told me in Spanish, the fact that you have the opportunity to vote, like that's something that is so amazing. And something I will never get to experience. And make sure that you use that privilege because you have been given this privilege to voice your concerns for others, for us that aren't able to do that. And that's something very powerful, which is why I don't ever take granted the privilege to vote. Because even if I don't feel like I'm doing it for myself, even if I feel like there's no point in doing it, I know that I'm doing it for others that don't have the opportunity to do that.
Is it possible for her to ever become a citizen in her lifetime?
Yeah, I mean, she's 63, 64.
That's young. That's young.
Yeah, she still, has plenty of time. But, yeah, I think
she could get like a sponsor or something.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And go through the procedure.
Yeah. But
that'd be cool.
Yeah, no,
that'd be a cool story.
Exactly.
It is definitely cool. My two of my grandparents finally got their citizenship. What was like one of them last year and the other one like around that time, like a couple years ago. Yeah, 1 or 2 years ago.
And what did they have to go through?
Well, you know what, they were residents for a little while. I know for sure, well, I don't know if my grandmother was, but I know for sure my grandpa, he tells me his story of coming across the border, so he was illegal, but they got their green card because of Reagan. And I did take my grandma to the Reagan Museum once, and she got so emotional because she was like, the reason why we're here today is because Reagan gave us the opportunity to. Yeah. But I think once they finally got their citizenship, it's such a proud moment. It's such a beautiful thing because you see a lot of other people who are crying too. If you go to a naturalization, I think it's called, a ceremony, it's just such a beautiful thing to see. Yeah. And it's amazing to see your grandparents, take that step and become citizens and finally have their ability to vote. My grandma, I was with her during the earlier this year when she was first getting her paperwork to go vote for the first time, and I was talking with her through it. So it's just an amazing thing. But
yeah, no, it's a great experience for sure. Yeah, my mom also recently became a citizen. I think maybe 6-7 years ago, and it was just I wasn't able to be with her at her naturalization ceremony, but it's just such a great and a beautiful thing and beautiful process. Very difficult process, of course, but just beautiful process seeing like the outcome, and all just like the work and that is put into it.
Yeah, I definitely have to say a lot of hard things a lot of good things require a lot of hard work. I've noticed that throughout life. But I want to know, just speaking specifically to Gen Z, why should they be so involved in the world around them, and why should they be caring about voting?
Yeah, I mean, I think because we're gonna continue to live in this world. I mean, we're not only caring for ourselves, right, for our generation, but the generations after us. Oh, my apologies. The generations after us. And I think with that, it's just so important to encourage people to vote. Obviously, it can be very difficult as going back to if you feel like your vote doesn't count. It's really hard to change people's minds, especially when they kind of already have their own like tied experiences as of why they have made that choice to do whatever. That applies to anything in life. But I think for Gen Z especially, it's just so important to get that vote out. I know for me in like my campus, we have a really great organization that focuses on just encouraging people to vote. And I also think sometimes something that could stray away people from voting is just like the process. Obviously, they have made it as I feel like the U.S. has made it, like, in their eyes as simple as possible, but it can still be a very, like, difficult process.
Yeah, you have to research, like, every single candidate, or you go to a voter's guide.
Exactly, and I think with that, it also just discourages, like, people, to vote. I think I've noticed, too, like...
Because it's a lot of work.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. Like, having to research candidates, or, you know, people will only, like, vote, like, the names that they, like, recognize, or, like, the name that sounds the coolest. I mean, I'm saying this because, like, this is how I voted before. Like, I don't really know. And also just,
easy,
like...
okay with me.
That's exactly. And also not even just, like, in the grand scheme of things, like, just voting for, at the federal level, voting for, like, obviously voting for the president. These are really huge, like, titles, right? But it's also important to, like, looking at your local government. Like, these are looking at your county, looking at the sheriff at the sheriff in your county, looking at, you know, courts, judges, things that are often, like, neglected, but they're on the ballot, and these are all important players. These are all important political actors that can that shape your entire county, your neighborhood, that decide whether or not you know, there will be like a rent increase in your neighborhood, or rent stabilization ordinances, which are kind of going back to, because I'm particularly interested in housing policy, you know, or share of kind of just maintaining and enforcing laws, or like police brutality is something that is unfortunately a really big issue here in the U.S., but if in particular, especially in your own neighborhood, you see that often. Like, these are people that can change that and change those issues and fix those issues. So I think things like that, people, I feel like, often only think about, like, voting for the presidential election, but no, there's all these preliminary elections that I think are just as important.
They definitely are. Yeah.
So just reminding people, especially Gen Z voters, that it's important, not just, in general. Like, it's not just presidential elections, but there are these local elections that hold just as much.
What's great, though, is if you don't know who you're going to vote for, you don't have to necessarily vote for that specific part.
You're not forced to. Yeah.
You can vote for what races you want to vote for. Yeah. Which is great.
Yeah, you can go to a voter's guide too. I mean, depending on if you trust someone.
The thing is like, you have to also trust who you're going to get your sources from.
Yeah.
Like,
no, exactly.
Do you really trust this person to inform you with the most unbiased opinion?
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Well, we are at 1 hour, so I think it's time to wrap up, but I also just wanted to give an update. So speaking of local politics, I believe Chino Hills has... started a lawsuit against the 1955 bill, where they were, it was passed that schools do not need to notify their parents if their child is transitioning. So now we're starting to see lawsuits in that. So that's something to pay attention to on a local level if you're in Los Angeles. And with that, I am Tara, and I will let Ellie into there.
Ellie, are there any final thoughts that you have?
No, just go out and vote and encourage other people to vote. Educate yourself.
And voice your opinion.
And politics is crazy, but take time to just educate yourself in any way that you can, any way you have access to, because it's really important. But thank you guys for having me here today.
Thank you. You were so great. Thanks for coming on. Yeah. We got through an earthquake.
Yeah, a lot.
Some disagreements.
Earthquake disagreements. And boba.
We
boba
shook the earth because we were able to sit at a table and have a civil discussion. See, guys, it's possible. Okay.
Thank you so much, guys, for joining us. Make sure to go check out our last video, which was done over Zoom, a little different, but it was still an amazing podcast with Echo Mike. So go check that out if you want to get like a man's perspective from like, I guess, the dating like world, you know, but also like masculinity, right? From masculinity, those types of things. So we had a really cool, I guess, insightful conversations. Personally, for me, I did leave with some thoughts, you know. So that was a good one. And then I just did another interview with Father Josiah Trenham. So that's going to be coming out soon, and I did that at his church. So that was a very interesting new experience, but that was a pretty cool one. So make sure to keep your eyes out for that. Okay, we'll see you next week. Bye.